Hello, 7th grade, and welcome to another edition of The Giver. This is chapter 14. It begins on page 136. Remember, as you read, especially if you're presenting the slides, focus on the conflicts that Jonas, our protagonist, faces, and especially the changes that are occurring with him due to those conflicts. Chapter 14. It was much the same, this memory, though the hill seemed to be a different one, steeper, and the snow was not falling as thickly as it had before. It was colder, also, Jonas perceived. He could see, as he sat waiting at the top of the hill, that the snow beneath the sled was not thick and soft as it had been before, but hard and coated with bluish ice. The sled moved forward, and Jonas grinned with delight, looking forward to the breathtaking slide down through the invigorating air. But the runners, this time, couldn't slice through the frozen expanse as they had on the other snow-cushioned hill. They skittered sideways, and the sled gathered speed. Jonas pulled at the rope, trying to steer, but the steepness and the speed took control of his hands, and he was no longer enjoying the feeling of freedom, but instead, terrified, was at the mercy of the wild acceleration downward over the ice. Sideways, spinning, the sled hit a bump in the hill, and Jonas was jarred loose and thrown violently into the air. He fell with his leg twisted under him, and could hear the crack of bone. His face scraped along jagged edges of ice, and when he came, at last, to a stop, he lay shocked and still, feeling nothing at first but fear. Then, the first wave of pain. He gasped. It was as if a hatchet lay lodged in his leg, slicing through each nerve with a hot blade. In his agony he perceived the word fire, and felt flames licking at the torn bone and flesh. He tried to move, and could not. The pain grew. He screamed. There was no answer. Sobbing, he turned his head and vomited onto the frozen snow. Blood dripped from his face into the vomit. "No!" he cried, and the sound disappeared into the empty landscape, into the wind. Then, suddenly, he was in the annex room again, writhing on the bed. His face was wet with tears. Able to move now, he rocked his own body back and forth, breathing deeply to release the remembered pain. He sat and looked at his own leg, where it lay straight on the bed, unbroken. The brutal slice of pain was gone, but the leg ached horribly, still, and his face felt raw. "May I have a relief of pain, please?" he begged. It was always provided in his everyday life, for the bruises and wounds, for a mashed finger, a stomach ache, a skinned knee from a fall from a bike. There was always a daub of anesthetic ointment, or a pill, or in several instances, an injection that brought complete and instantaneous deliverance. But the giver said no, and looked away. Limping, Jonas walked home, pushing his bicycle that evening. The sunburn pain had been so small, in comparison, and had not stayed with him. But this ache lingered. It was not unendurable, as the pain on the hill had been. Jonas tried to be brave. He remembered that the chief elder had said he was brave. "Is something wrong, Jonas?" his father asked at the evening meal. "You're so quiet tonight. Aren't you feeling well? Would you like some medication?" But Jonas remembered the rules. No medication for anything related to his training, and no discussion of his training. At the time for sharing of feelings, he simply said that he felt tired, that his school lessons had been unusually demanding that day. He went to his sleeping room early, and from behind the closed door he could hear his parents and sister laughing as they gave Gabriel his evening bath. "They have never known pain," he thought. The realization made him feel desperately lonely, and he rubbed his throbbing leg. He eventually slept. Again and again, he dreamed of the anguish and the isolation on the forsaken hill. The daily training continued, and now it always included pain. The agony of the fractured leg began to seem no more than a mild discomfort as the giver led Jonas firmly, little by little, into the deep and terrible suffering of the past. Each time, in his kindness, the giver ended the afternoon with a color-filled memory of pleasure. A brisk sail on a blue-green lake, a meadow dotted with yellow wildflowers, an orange sunset behind mountains. It was not enough to assuage the pain that Jonas was beginning now to know. "Why?" Jonas asked him after he had received a torturous memory in which he had been neglected and unfed. The hunger had caused excruciating spasms in his stomach, distended stomach. He lay on the bed, aching. "Why do you and I have to hold these memories?" "It gives us wisdom," the giver replied. "Without wisdom, I could not fulfill my function of advising the committee of elders when they call upon me." "But what wisdom do you get from hunger?" Jonas groaned. His stomach still hurt, though the memory had ended. "Some years ago," the giver told him, "before your birth, a lot of citizens petitioned the committee of elders. They wanted to increase the rate of births. They wanted each birth mother to be assigned 4 births instead of 3, so that the population would increase and there would be more laborers available." Jonas nodded, listening. "That makes sense." The idea was that certain family units could accommodate an additional child. Jonas nodded again. "Mine could," he pointed out. "We have Gabriel this year, and it's fun having a 3rd child." "The committee of elders sought my advice," the giver said. "It made sense to them too, but it was a new idea, and they came to me for wisdom." "And you used your memories?" The giver said yes. And the strongest memory that came was hunger. It came from many generations back, centuries back. The population had got so big that hunger was everywhere, excruciating hunger and starvation. It was followed by warfare. Warfare. It was a concept Jonas did not know, but hunger was familiar to him now. Unconsciously, he rubbed his own abdomen, recalling the pain of its unfulfilled needs. "So you described that to them?" "They don't want to hear about pain. They just seek the advice. I simply advise them against increasing the population." "But you said that was before my birth. They hardly ever come to you for advice. Only when they... What was it you said? When they have a problem they've never faced before? When did it happen last?" "Do you remember the day when the plane flew over the community?" "Yes, I was scared." "So were they. They prepared to shoot it down, but they sought my advice. I told them to wait." "But how did you know? How did you know that the pilot was lost?" "I didn't. I used my wisdom from the memories. I knew that there had been times in the past, terrible times, when people had destroyed others in haste, in fear, and had brought about their own destruction." Jonas realized something. "That means," he said slowly, "that you have the memories of destruction, and you have to give them to me too, because I have to get the wisdom." The giver nodded. "But it will hurt," Jonas said. It wasn't a question. "It will hurt terribly," the giver agreed. "But why can't everyone have the memories? I think it would seem a little easier if the memories were shared. You and I wouldn't have to bear so much by ourselves if everybody took a part." The giver sighed. "You're right," he said. "But then everyone would be burdened and pained. They don't want that. And that's the real reason the receiver is so vital to them, and so honored. They selected me and you to lift that burden from themselves." "When did they decide that?" Jonas asked angrily. "It wasn't fair. Let's change it." "How do you suggest we do that? I've never been able to think of a way, and I'm supposed to be the one with all the wisdom." "But there are two of us now," Jonas said eagerly. "Together we can think of something." The giver watched him with a wry smile. "Why can't we just apply for a change of rules?" Jonas suggested. The giver laughed. Then Jonas, too, chuckled reluctantly. "The decision was made long before my time or yours," the giver said, "and before the previous receiver, and—" He waited. "Back and back and back," Jonas repeated the familiar phrase. Sometimes it had seemed humorous to him. Sometimes it had seemed meaningful and important. Now it was ominous. It meant, he knew, that nothing could be changed.